Hello, everybody. Welcome. It is February 1st, 2023 already. I'm Aurora. This is Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans, Level 2 and Lesson 10. I'm scrolling through my notes. I'm admitting more people. Sorry that I just turned away. You guys know I always have my extensive notes prepared over here. Oh, wait. One thing is highlighted. What do I want to highlight? Oh, this is actually very good. This is so this is actually a jam-packed lesson. And I'm not sure if I need to go today up until 3:45 or if I have until 4 p.m. So I'm actually going to do a lot of the jam-packed stuff in the first hour. And also the things that I wrote about in here 10 years ago are now really more augmented and contextualized by the Path of Light class. So I'm starting a new Path of Light class. I did that once the first time with the first group of lovely and amazing participants at the end of last year. And I'm going to start again this Saturday, February 4th. And you are all invited to join or rejoin. And if you've already enrolled, you do not have to enroll again. Just make sure that I have your email and just send me a note that you're interested and I'll put you on the list. I say this because the new Path of Light curriculum is a new way for me to be able to share these same ideas that I talk about in this lesson, the sense of the sun having photons as sensory organs and what is actually happening. But the difference in the way that I presented it 10 years ago and the way that I diagram it now is in the drawings that I'm using. So what I'm going to do is sprinkling in a lot of the new flavor of Path of Light stuff into today's teaching. So even if you are very familiar with my Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans curriculum and everything that I've taught, and you might have been in class for a while, I'm going to make you stretch your mind with a bunch of new stuff as it relates to this. So one of the things that I have highlighted in my notes here that I'll just start off with, I wrote, if we lived in a realm populated by people who only emanated high quality ideas, the beings of the interstices would starve. So this is in reference to the part 2 of the teaching, where I don't know if I will get that much emphasis on this, but I want to talk about it a little bit because I also feel like this, just if I share with you authentically and philosophically. I do believe that what we focus on with our tendril of attention is being tasted and also fed with our attention. And I truly wish to focus, for us all to focus more on the impeccable, truthful, empirical reality of pure light and less on the crapola that is smeared on the edges of the membrane of death. So part 2 refers a lot to the pooties on the membrane of death, but I want to focus more on the Path of Light. But I think that there are a couple of different points that I want to talk about when we talk about these pooties. For anyone who is new or watching this out of context and doesn't necessarily know, hat tip to Pedro, who's here today, invented this acronym for the lighthearted term that I use for what is also more, emotionally or religiously referred to as demons, those pesky occupiers of the interstices, P-O-O-T-I-S, the pooties. So in this class, we lightheartedly call them pooties. It's a way of taking away the emotional charge of demons, but still, I always warn everyone, like, these guys are not your friends, and I call them the peanut gallery, and I talk about them lightheartedly, but none of this is like meant to de-emphasize the very real perils or challenges that they face, even while I make a lighthearted face while I'm telling you about all of this. What are the interstices? Oh, and this is from Charlie B, a chat while it still is relevant. He says, and thank you for being here, and thank you for being a student of all of my classes, including Path of Light, says, it seems to be a rather tricky balance to be aware of the pooties and what's going on, but not engage or empower them. Absolutely. It is literally the balance that I try to walk every day. Part of the generative activity of Flying Rainbow Lasagna is making the stuff I want. Like if this were my pencil or paintbrush, I'd be like, yep, I'm drawing reality. I'm drawing all the things, painting into existence, all the things that I want. But then there seemed to be just this profusion of either things that I don't want that are grandfathered in from someone else, like I'm painting on a canvas that's already got imagery on it from some other artist, or that seem to spontaneously arise and just pop out of into existence or into turmoil, creating turbulence seemingly out of nowhere. I don't know how they come into existence. And that's also part of what I just openly allude to. Like, I shrug my shoulders. I don't know how they can be, and there's no causality structure, but somehow they're there and things are kind of a little bit messed up as a result of it. I really try to focus on the things that I wish to manifest in reality, but yet We cannot be in denial of the things that we do not want. So everything that I teach, because sometimes I have to be a little bit defensive in this so that my work is never misconstrued or miscontextualized. Our job is not simply to be like lifting our skirts and be like, I will tiptoe around giant piles of poo-poo caca and pretend that it's not there. You know, that is not our job. But our job is definitely not to step in the poo-poo caca, but it is genuinely to come up with an effective response. Responsible means responsive to the very real life challenges and contextual challenges that we find ourselves in. And I also have cautionary tales on the presumption that just because the piles of poo-poo caca exist does not mean that it emanates from your own mind or from your own pineal gland or from your own creative and generative process. So many of these things might be ancestral, even all the way back to ancestral trauma of things that happened on our planet in the original genetic degradation, things that could be considered not your personal level of responsibility, and yet you are responsive to in that they exist. Same thing with like a larger organism like government. Like you didn't invent the rotten, corrupt government. You are here within its purview. You are responding to it. But it is part of a larger context and a larger collective and a larger narrative. And your own struggles for freedom happen within that narrative. And the struggles for consciousness attainment and spiritual attainment happen within the larger context of things that have happened that have been imbalances of the past that have deformed or degraded this truly perfect system. So I'm starting off the class with focusing on the imperfections of what should be a perfect system. But just to define terms, we have here the chakra shape or double toroid shape. That is a shape that represents infinity in terms of the frictionless flow of energy around this state in various, interlocking figure eights that never ends. And this is meant to be journey from the source outward into physicality, and then from physicality, re-transcending or achieving the speed of light again and returning back to this infinity point of source. But there's something is wrong. And that's actually why I am here, because something is wrong. So I jokingly call myself like a computer debugger of a very, very large system that is the supercomputer of reality that is biological and that is expressed also in the biological feature of DNA, where it's kind of my job to be able to say, let's go into the system and actually experience it and actually see like what is going wrong, and then be empowered as a firsthand experiencer to change and reshape and respond to the system. So the big takeaway from all of this is, although it is sometimes mystifying and inexplicable, how can these pooties even exist? We recognize that the perfect, divine, pristine system is out of balance. As a person with a body, each one of you, beautiful students and listeners of this video, you have incredibly valuable real estate. Please love and appreciate your body with whatever bumps or flaws or challenges or uncomfortablenesses it has, because you have your own unique genetic code, and this gives you a foothold in reality that many other organisms do not have. And I'll also make a distinction here. So when you have a body, you have a vote, basically. Like, if I moved to France, I would be able to say, I'm involved in local politics. I care about who's the mayor. I live here in my small town. I care about who's the mayor. And I care about our lake that gives us our water for the faucet and for the bathtub. You care about local politics and you're invested in the locality where you live. You have a physical body, live on planet Earth, and care about the energy formations that are here, and the energy dynamics is a better way of saying it. So if something is unfair that is going on here, it directly affects you. You get to have an impact on it. Changing your DNA and radiating a different level of expression through doing flying rainbow lasagna as a rectification is your right. It's like saying, I'm going to vote differently, or I'm going to even achieve office myself. Like, I'm going to become a town council member and I'm going to make things better. That is very much what the responsiveness to the situation is. So whoever made things imbalanced in the time field, however it happened, whatever is the backstory of it, is less primary than the response to that situation, which is giant bucket and a mop, which is what the dance of new, I have to put this down so I can do my dance. Wait. dance properly. The dance of your DNA is all about changing that particular unfair or out of balance time structure. And what does this also mean? It means not, please, everyone, I'm gonna just say, don't jump out the window, don't stab yourself in the face, but these pooties that are also AKA demons, they exist within you. That is really why you get to have a vote. According to cosmic law, like this really empirical, non-negotiable, incontrovertible law, you have your own boundaries and you get to choose who and what resides and is active within your own boundaries. So if this represents one of your chakras or time spirals, and there is something that is a consciousness residue that is living here, totally appropriate for you to kick it out. Totally, or kicking it out is vernacular. It would be to resolve that stuck energy and bring it to a state of entropy. So that energy can then flow again in a perfect circle here, because these over here, these pooties represent energetic blockages or unresolved emotional residues of bad things that have happened in the world. And from my teaching about harmonics, you're able to see in the structure of our very solar system, something bad happened. It's now a pile of rubble called the asteroid belt. Something bad happened on Mars. All of those unrestful ghosts came into the human genome. Something bad is going on our planet right now. Something bad might even be going on in your family history or in your own life. But again, please do not jump out the window. Please do not be self-violent or self-destructive. There are things that you can do in terms of clearing out the pooties and clearing out the interstices. And yes, love is the most powerful interdimensional solvent, in the same way that water is considered the universal solvent in our physicality realm. Water dissolves everything. Enough water over enough time will literally dissolve everything. Love tone. Wait, let me play it. It's set up like a synthesizer. I didn't expect it to be so loud. I hope I didn't burn your eardrums. Love tone is a universal solvent that is energy that is moving at a particular frequency rate. And the whole idea of these stuck energies that are over here as accumulated pain signals of the cosmos is that if they are subjected to enough of this strongly flowing energy that we know as the love tone, eventually it does dissolve them, but that they've just been there for what humans would call millennia, but it's actually hyperspace, which is a time outside of time. So it could be considered an uncountable amount of time. And their whole agenda is to extend their existence in the sense of being an extremely slow dissolve pill. Like, you take one of these medicines and it's supposed to kind of like dissolve slowly in your intestines. They're like, we don't want to dissolve too fast. We're going to dissolve super, super, super duper slow. And that is what has been leading to many imbalances and sufferings in the world as they attempt to achieve their hovering. Instead of going into entropy, which would be like falling off the bottom of the screen, they're like, we want to suck off of the living and just hover at this level just about enough to be able to kind of keep things going. And you are not obliged to feed them. You are not obliged to allow them to draw energy from you. And it is one of the greatest levels of expression of the truthfulness of your sovereignty and spiritual attainment to set those energy boundaries. So what you are to do in your life is to begin to cultivate and enforce these very strong energetic boundaries where you do not allow either behaviorally, energetically, emotionally, or in the trajectory of your life, these entities to draw energy off of you. And this is, of course, not an easy thing to do. And what I just said is kind of like, yeah, the secret to being a giant weightlifter, and, the size of whatever, some famous weightlifter, like Schwarzenegger. It's just like, move your arm like this a lot. That's kind of reductionist, kind of simplistic. Of course, famous weightlifters do a lot more in terms of their body form, their different exercises, and their different dietary things that they do just to grow that levels of muscle. So achieving energy boundaries that mean that these harmful residual consciousnesses cannot feed off of you is a lifetime achievement, lifetime goal, lifetime achievement. Please approach the process with radical self-love, radical compassion, radical forgiveness, and recognize that it is a revolutionary act that also might make them a little mad. They're like, stop taking our food away from us. We're very hungry, blah, blah, blah. We're going to make your life up. We're going to try to perturb you. They might have a reaction against it. All of that in order to create a beautiful analogy with, hold on a moment. I'm just also making funny faces because I squint to read the chat. Sorry, because my eyesight is not always that clear. The human endocannabinoid system. So that is something that I really want to relate here. I heard everybody's record just scratch like, what are we doing? We're talking about the membrane of death, AKA hell. But then we're also talking about cannabis and what does this have to do, Aurora? Like, I'm skeptical. I'm pretending that that's what you're saying. You guys all know that this is, everything always meshes together. My presentations truly do dovetail together. So basic takeaways of what this lesson 10 of level 2 is all about. The sun emits photons as feelers. We are part of the larger light body of the sun. This body of time is also your body of light. Time equals light equals information equals organizational principle equals sentience. And the photons, and what is a photon? A photon is a human science word for a little slice or crumb of the much, much larger overarching frequency cake that is a sea of waveforms that comes, it is light and it is information and sentience, not just from the sun, as I'm pointing out my window where the sun is right now, but from every star. So stars, not according to human earth science, but stars in general are the emitters of light, like the primary emitters of light. That is a connection to the source, as opposed to here I am pointing at my light bulb, that is a secondary emitter of light. That is not, it comes from electricity. This is also path of light stuff. Join my class. It's amazing. I love talking about light and focusing on light. And I focus on light as my meditation to not focus on the pooties and to grow and accrete more light, because that's more what I want more of. Stars and our sun in particular as being direct connections to that source of all consciousness, sending out light as emanations. A photon is a packet, according to human comprehension and definition, of a much, much larger ocean of waveforms. So quantized or quantum means a discrete packet, like a box or a circle container that has boundaries. But it really is an arbitrary definition of something that is totality state. All light everywhere is connected. So when we're talking about spiritual attainment, because I do mix both scientific, materialistic, objective viewpoint of the phenomena of our world, with also spiritual attainment, which is the sense of your growth and trajectory of consciousness. Light is unity consciousness. When you really get up to light speed, you recognize, wait a minute, I'm light and I'm in an ocean of light and I'm eating and drinking light, whether I am drinking physical water here or whether I am drinking the pure waveform of divine intelligence. I am surrounded by light and constantly emitting light. And then what you have is a super complex, interconnected metabolism of light. That is the highest viewpoint, highest self viewpoint, unity consciousness of what light is. And that's an amazing achievement to be at that, like that's like at the mountain peak, how everything looks and how everything is experienced. And also when we are individuated here, then you come down to the sense of I'm an individual, I have boundaries, here is self, here is not self, here's my epidermis, here's the limit of who I am versus who I'm not. And then we get into these very real moral and ethical aspects of cosmic law. Again, cosmic law is not something to quibble over, barter, or negotiate, or whatever, pay a lawyer to get you off the hook for, or something like that. These energy boundaries and the protection of your own light and life force energy is an aspect of individuation that is important to assert when we're at this level. That's like saying, this is my lunch and it goes in my belly and it feeds me and fuels me. I'm not going to just give my lunch away to that guy over there, or give one tiny molecule of lunch to everybody in the world, and then everybody can have a tiny amount of sustenance, but nobody really gets by. Different approaches for different levels of reality. So I want to always make sure my ideas are not taken out of context, misconstrued, or used as a disempowerment tool, weaponized. As we know, many other wonderful teachers who have been here in the world, master teachers, I don't put myself in the same category. I admire them greatly. And recognize that their teachings have been weaponized and often used for disempowerment. And I always want to safeguard what I share so that way it is not done in the same way. So I always say, please do not hug and kiss a demon. Please do not justify their behavior or say they're there. It's all okay. It's not your fault. And please take my lunch. Don't let them take your lunch. Your lunch is for you. Your light energy lunch that comes directly from the sun and the stars is a literal custom created field of energy or a suit of clothing that is made directly for you from the sun and the stars and the larger network of light. And it is meant to be not just random calories, as humans might look at food like chomp chomp, these are random calories. They go into me and then I burn them off as kcalories while I'm running down the road. This is actually a very tailor-made set of ideas and information that is designed specifically for you to come inside of you, feed you, nourish you, and guide you, and slowly change your trajectory until you're on that perfect divine timeline. And I talk in my notes here, please always check out my notes, about what is ascension and what is heaven. And heaven is basic, and ascension is basically when you're on that central core timeline. I always make this, going up the center of this sculpture over here, central core timeline, and that you are going to be experiencing heaven as a perfect, blissful, frictionless state. And the residual consciousnesses that are stuck on the membrane of death, the pooties, they represent emotional friction. So diddle it back to the idea of the endocannabinoid system. So like you're jumping around a lot, Aurora, I don't know. You can do it, guys. Stick with me. So the sun emits feelers that are photons. Photons come out here and either travel endlessly in one direction or bounce off of things and send energy back or become ingested by us. And we consciously broadcast that back. I'll reiterate that and get back to that. But this is directly analogous to in your own body. In your own body, human mammals, and also dogs and cats and a couple of other mammals have a particular innate system that is called your endocannabinoid system. Let's write it out for everyone. Hold on a second. Wait, I got to pull things to the side. I got to press buttons. I got to squint. And then let's press a button here. Just good. Let's press another button here. Boom. So endo is the prefix meaning within, with naturally occurring within the body. And cannabinoid means relating to cannabis. You're like, Aurora, you're talking about cannabis, you're talking about marijuana. I'm being silly, a little bit facetious. The many social and cultural judgments that have been placed upon this particular substance, particular plant that is external to us, grows cannabinoids. Do you know that flax is another plant that grows cannabinoids? So they are a particular definition of molecular shape and form that is a neurotransmitter and relates to biochemistry. These are innate to the human body, but they are made out of different types of precursors. So like many different enzymes in the body, in order for you to have them active and part of the successful biological architecture and functionality of your metabolism, it is necessary to have the precursors or building blocks that you use to make them. The endocannabinoid system is natural and innate to the definition of what it is to be a healthy human. Many of the diseases and imbalances in the physical structure that humans experience right now in industrialized, I want to say Western, but these words don't even work for me, but let us say industrialized, quote unquote, developed, or corporatized might be a better word for it, levels of our world right now, pretty much since the 1950s. A lot of the chronic diseases, digestive issues, even obesity and overweight, and specifically definitely cancer, are a direct result of having imbalances or not enough of the cannabis in your diet. So as another, rewind. Historically, hemp and cannabis, and they're the same exact plant, but they are simply different, slightly different strains of the same plant that are grown in slightly different ways. So they contain many of the same chemicals in different proportions. I use CBD, which is a particular cannabinoid. Let's talk cannabinoids. There's a whole array. THC is one that is the most famous. CBD, and that is psychoactive. That means that it will create a mental effect and you will feel quote unquote high or psychedelic or activated in some way. CBD is a less well-known but becoming more well-known cannabinoid that is not in every commercially available strain, but is a part of the natural strains that have been growing for a long time. So there is such a thing as weedy hemp, hemp that has escaped cultivation, and it lives mostly along interstates in places like Nebraska and Oklahoma and some areas of Tennessee, because if you rewind historically, United States was based on hemp. Hemp was a huge aspect of the industry of the creation of this country. And if you go back and rewind even further, 5,000 years, you get to China. China literally means land of hemp. China means land of hemp. How amazing. The hemp plant was the basis for more complex human cultural development in China at that time in our world. It literally was what made possible human civilization and development. So if you want to be like, okay, Aurora, like anthropomorphically, what makes it possible for many, many people to live together, create complex human societies, live in cities, create industry, build big buildings, build bridges, do something more than live in a simple cob house or a bamboo hut or something like that? The answer is steady food supply, enough medicine to treat people, fiber and things like that, because you're going to have to wear clothes, and you're also going to need to be able to make things to kind of keep yourself warm and have a source for all of these things. And hemp is an annual, and so that's something that grows once every year. You plant a little tiny seed that's tinier than you can even see on your screen, and it grows into a tree in 1 year that can be like 12 feet tall. That's amazing. That's very, very, very different than like a pine tree that's going to take 10 or 20 years to grow tall enough to be able to create timber or lumber that you can then use to chop down and create a house, a boat, whatever you need for the industry of your society. So it is extremely efficient in what it is able to create, and the fibers that it makes are extremely strong. So hemp was used in ancient China as the seed, which is incredibly beautiful and healthy, contains a ton of protein and a ton of these very positive omega-6 and omega-3 fatty acid chains that are also essential for human cognitive development. And then it also contains these cannabinoids that are used for medicine. So cannabinoids that are psychoactive are not found throughout the whole entire plant. The plant that is known as hemp is most weighted towards CBD and the non-psychoactive plant chemicals that are known as cannabinoids. And THC is actually quite rare. More recently, humans have found like, oh, if you selectively breed this plant, you can make the plant grow differently, grow smaller, not really growing it for fabric and for seed, and you can exacerbate the plant's tendency to make THC, which is what most humans value. THC is awesome. It's great. I'm not going to diminish it at all, and I use it a lot in my own life and in my own health, and it has wonderful neuroprotective and anti-cancer qualities to it. It's wonderful stuff. Mostly, I'm a devotee of CBD, which I also like. I have my little whatever capsules right there that are now commercially available, but I used to only be able to grow my own because there's all these limitations and laws, which we will get into as basically consciousness suppression and consciousness reduction. There's a reason why this plant that is the basis of human culture in our more recent post-World War II, quote unquote, industrialized or commercialized realm has been suppressed in order to prevent the healthy functioning signaling of cell-to-cell signaling and metabolism within your body. Boom. It's not conspiratorial. There's a genuine agenda to suppress your body's innate healthy functioning and your light body and your connection of your neurology to the sun and the stars, because your brain is a smaller miniature fractal version of the sun and the stars. And that's a good allusion to atoms. And Atom, thank you for being here and thank you for being in our class, says harmonics also reminds me of fractals. That is exactly truthful. The definition of fractal is a tiny self-similar copy. So you see a lot of fractals in all of my paintings. Like there's a shape that looks like this, four-lobed shape, but there's a bigger one that's shaped exactly like that. Like that canvas is a good example. The whole entire canvas is a giant lobe shaped like this, but within that, then there are many, many, many multiple tinier ones. That is exactly what harmonics is or are. That is exactly, wait, let me play some music here. That is harmonics, and it makes the sound waves and compression waves tiny fractal self-similar versions. And that's why when you play a chord, it sounds good, because all of these little circles fit together properly, as opposed to when I mash my keyboard, you're like, whoa, that sounds terrible. Stop it. I'm not going to hurt your ears. The fractal nature of your brain as it relates to the sun and the stars. When there are blockages in your own neurology, this relates to directly the blockages of energy flowing effectively through time and the recognition of stuck energy, unresolved emotional residues. We would call them pooties, can also be AKA negative entities, or these fragments of consciousness that have not yet gone to peace. You can also call them the unrestful dead. And as I prepare for class, I always think about all of these things very, very deeply, because I always consider what I wrote 10 years ago, what we're going through right now, my most recent insights in terms of the path of light. And I realized it was important for me to be able to emphasize that not every creature or entity or consciousness residue that is currently smeared on the membrane of death is equitable or the same or comparable to each other. What humans call fallen angels, which are AKA demons, which is hugely emotionally, religiously charged language, which I'm not really in alignment with, but which I'm using in order to create a commonality of so you can relate to the things that you are already familiar with, even though I am not endorsing many of the theological dogmas that have run the human world for a very long amount of time, which I think are very unhealthy. But don't hug and kiss a demon or a pootie. All right. So the story in the Bible says, here is God, here's a bunch of God's angels. Angels are supposed to follow God's command. Some of them were mean, rotten, or otherwise unrecalcitrant, and decided that they were going to go away from God. They said, F you, God, I'm getting out of here. And they became the fallen angels. And those fallen angels have never been embodied or existed in this type of anthropomorphic form, one face, two arms, two legs, and living in God's creation. They've never been that. They have gone from a sense of being directly connected to the source and in this potentiality of pureness, of events and reality structures that can come into being. And then they have gone into what should have been a direct pathway to entropy, but instead has been a very long, slow, painful pulling away. And as they are doing so, creating many, many frictions within the larger superstructure of time. Contrast that with people like you or I who have actually been embodied throughout many different ages and many different contexts. There have been people that have a face, two arms, and two legs, and all of the spiritual and soul responsibilities of what it is to be embodied and to have DNA. What did I say at the beginning of this broadcast here? You have a body, you have a vote. All right. So you are invested in reality. You are an inhabitant and a participant of reality and of the time field. You have DNA and you have a body, and you get to influence reality with your thoughts and your feelings and your desires. And those who have never had a body literally should not be voting. That's like if I lived in whatever, South America, but I wanted to vote in France. It's not right. Or what if I didn't live anywhere, but I wanted to vote in France? It's not right. This is why I'm here as Aurora. If I were just, like I joke about this, doing the backstroke on an interdimensional cloud, being a harmonic waveform, I would, not have that same level of direct personal investment in the activities and reality structures that are occurring here in this time, place, now, in terms of how it relates to humans and having a human body and life on Earth. I am living here on Earth right now, I have a human body, and that's intentional because it gives me a cosmic law, true empirical reality structure justification for being invested in the reality events here and being able to influence the reality events here, even though there is, as a brief aside, a causality structure that states if you are up at these higher levels and there's perturbations at the foundation of being a embodied person, yes, that trickles upward and affects you there. So those guys there also do technically have a vote, but it's just not the same. They are, I don't have even a good analogy for it, but it's not the same as being a direct property owner, and I'm touching my face, having a direct body, but they are still very much care about you, care about the planet, care about the trajectory of life and consciousness and the sustenance of the overarching structure of the cosmos, and wanting to maintain the aliveness of the larger animal that we know as time. Yes, they are very much invested in that. If you live in time, yes, you get to have a vote about that. These pooties and occupiers of the interstices technically don't live in time. They're outside of time, but not the same as Aurora, my collective, that is otherworldly, that is in a hyperspace reality outside of time and space, but not smeared on the membrane of death. Big, big, big distinctions being made here. But the distinction that I'm really trying to get to is the sense that there is not a judgment and a value judgment that is made on those aspects of an embodied human or any kind of creature that has lived a biological life and then died and hit the membrane of death and finds its consciousness in that in-between world. The in-between world, the interstices, is defined as being similar to the meniscus, which is the layer on top of a glass of water or even a pond of water where there is surface tension, a slight thickening of the material itself. We're talking about time. When we have this structure here, it is made out of the whirling and swirling of time amidst itself. And these interstices over here are a slight thickening or a membrane of that fluid material. Time is fluid, it flows. That is not meant to be occupied. It is actually meant to be a transitory space that energy flows from one place to another, not stays there indefinitely, not stays there for eternity, not stays there blocking up. I want to say blocking up the joint. So I don't have a hallway here where I live, or whatever. There's a small one over there. Usually when I do these broadcasts, I say, this would be like if I had my hallway over here that connects one room, to the living room or whatever. And then you've got a homeless encampment that decides to set up camp in your living room, in your hallway. And you can't walk from your living room to your bedroom because they're there. Like there's tents, there's a little campfire, someone's cooking Vienna sausages over the campfire. Like that is not what it's supposed to be. And it is an accurate analogy to say that these unresolved thought forms are like a homeless encampment. You don't have a home. When you are alive, you have a home. And when you have DNA and you have biological architecture, you have a home. So the distinction is that some of these entities, in my language, here's another way of saying it that is non-biblical. Here's the source, and those entities or aspects of fragmentary consciousness or characteristics recognized that they were erroneous. They did not belong here in the state of totality beingness. They actually had a positive nature in the sense of being like, I'm not actually supposed to exist. I am erroneous. Let me cease to exist. So going away from the state of total existence, which is what the 0th dimension and infinity and the source is, and going into a state of entropy was the initial ideal. It's the true cosmic faith that they are meant to say, I don't belong here. I belong in a state of non-being. I will go away from here and not be. But again, the truthfulness is that they did not successfully reach their destination of entropy. It's been a long, slow process, kind of like I'm up here on the top of a giant building and I'm not supposed to be here. I'm going to fall down and come all the way down to the ground. And I'm falling backwards, falling backwards, endlessly falling backwards for however many millennia. That unresolved journey is what I'm talking about here. Those guys are qualitatively different than any one of us that might be busy doing your best to explore the choose your own adventure novel of your life, the various iterations and variations that can happen for you moving through time and sometimes unsuccessfully calculating. And when you miscalculate, you end up, instead of going up that central core timeline and going through the wormhole at the top, hitting the membrane of death. And when that happens, Pedro always jokes with us too, game over, try again. That is, I think, from maybe the video game world, GOTA, game over, try again. And I sometimes imagine, because the only video game that I'm really familiar with is Pac-Man, where that little Pac-Man guy kind of goes, and then it melts away. And then you have to put another quarter in the machine and try it all again, which I know this is very antiquated. Nobody plays Pac-Man. But that's all that I'm really familiar with culturally. These unsuccessful attempts are not meant to be punished. And that is big because you might have beloved loved ones, former whatever, pets and partners and spouses and family members who died and went to the membrane of death. And they're not supposed to be there eternally. And what's supposed to happen, they're not bad people. This is big. But they're supposed to go to the membrane of death and then be exposed to love, the universal solvent. All of that love unknits the genetic sweater, returns everything back to its factory settings or its state of pure potential, and gives the experiencer the life review, assessment of all the things that you did and didn't do. And this relates to your rapport with the sun as you, a tiny fractal microcosm of the brain, of the great brain of the sky. You're supposed to be live streaming to the sun. And I never even used to have the language for this because this was before live streaming was invented when I did this class 10 years ago. A live direct broadcast. But what most people do is, because of the genetic degradation that creates kind of like a barrier to direct contact with the sun and the stars, and the genetic degradation, it is many different things. It is an implantation at the level of yellow, this chakra that is human intellect and daily waking awareness and ego structure, and it also involves language. The constant chattering of our verbalized mind in our language centers of our brain makes it difficult to do a real-time broadcast and send this information back to the sun instantaneously as we are supposed to. So photons are feelers. We are made of photons. We are made of light. We are made of light that is slowed down to the point of being perceived as physical solid matter. Take my Path of Light class. I talk all about the states of matter. I love to do it. That's why I'm telling you this. You're supposed to be here as slowed down light, gathering information, being like, wow, like I'm sitting on this chair. I'm in this room. I'm looking at something that's the color blue. And you're supposed to be broadcasting that back directly while it is still relevant to the sun and the rest of the stellar network that is a great brain that basically created you, created and upholds the context that you're within, and sent you out there, down there, in there, in order to be able to get a sense of what is happening. It works just like echolocation of a bat. How a bat does echolocation, bats do not primarily use their eyes to be able to perceive the world. Mostly they're using their ears. They send out these little calls that are super high pitched and supersonic. Sometimes we don't even hear them. These little sound waves bounce off of things and then bounce back to the bat, who can hear the bouncing, the echo, and then interpret that and build a picture of reality in an amazing way to be able to sense where are objects in space. And this matters because bats often fly in very dark places. This is why they don't rely primarily on their eyesight and the presence of light. They're using echolocation to be able to be like, where is there a tiny insect while I'm flying around so that I can eat it, stay alive, and do my job in the world? The sun is using a very similar sense of sending out signals, seeing if those signals bounce off of anything, receiving back the energy that is bouncing back, and then building a picture and a viewpoint of reality based upon the bounce back. Except in this case, it is the bounce back of light / consciousness / sentience / intelligence. So hugely important for the sun and the stars to function effectively as great brains in receiving that information while it is still relevant in real time. As a direct result of the things that happened on Mars, degradations of the human genome that made it so that humans have this implanted language center, a reduction of the direct consciousness bridge between ourselves as light and that which has emanated us as light. Mostly what happens is humans live their whole entire life, then hit the membrane of death, and then hand in their hard drive. Hold on, let me grab a hard drive. That's what this is right over here. Like I said, I jump up at least once per class. Here's my hard drive, and it contains all of my songs that I've written over a certain period of time, right? Imagine if I never uploaded them or sent them out anyplace, and I lived my whole entire life saving everything important on my hard drive, and then I died, and then I'm like, okay, sun, stars, here's everything I've ever experienced, every thought, every feeling, every sensation, every context, every place I've ever been and everything that I've ever done is recorded on here. And the sun is like, okay, great. Oh, fantastic. I just found out why you died. If only I had known about all of this stuff that was going on, I could have changed reality, because the sun is an emanator and a broadcaster, not just of photons as light that gives us information about the world around us, but as reality structures, light as a structure of reality. And the sun is so loving and so present for us, literally, Son of God, all right? Sun with a U in it, the Son of God. That is this amazing broadcaster of pure consciousness that is directing events and sustaining and nourishing us through our lives. When you don't have genetic blockades, and when you are able to be in a direct connection to the sun, which is what most people achieve through a sense of profound effort, willpower, and devotion, that is known as meditation. And sometimes it's known as prayerfulness, sometimes it's lived as mindfulness. If you do those activities, then you broadcast in real time. And you also get to say what you've experienced up until that moment. So you're like, this is the past 10 years. Then you send that information to the sun. And the sun is like, oh, I just found out about all this stuff, but I also can sense and anticipate. If you keep on going in the same direction, you're gonna hit the membrane of death. But if I broadcast to you as the sun a new upgraded trajectory, like here's the new information that you need to be able to go in a better direction in your life, all of a sudden you change the direction of your consciousness a little bit. And when you're able to live in that state of direct divine rapport, that's when you are going up the central core timeline and really living as God on earth, really living as God embodied in a physical material realm, really living as an ascended or ascending master. And that is very a beautiful attainment. So being an ascended master is not necessarily like, I just ascended, this is great, bloop, I blip out of reality. You ascend into your complete direct rapport with God, then you live as this total light being, invested and imbued completely with divine intelligence and divine willpower before you go through the wormhole and go elsewhere. So it's a very, very positive way of being. And it's the pamphlet. When I talk about the brochure, like you are given the brochure, would you like to incarnate? This is what it's going to be like. You will be this, you will be this, you will be this, you will be God, incarnate, you will have a direct divine connection. You will not be away from your home, stellar family. You will be completely connected to the sun and the stars the whole entire time. And you will have amazing adventures as an individual. Sign me up, let's go on that. And then you come here and have this experience and you're like, this is nothing like the pamphlet. I am lighthearted because it is devastating. It is not okay. There's a huge amount of depression and disillusionment when people get here that I'm trying to break through as a very lighthearted and positive artist and musician and lasagna-er as a verb, doer of lasagna, to kind of get people back to this sense of you're living in a world that is not according to the pamphlet, but there is a divine ideal structure of the way that it's supposed to be. and supposed to be not with that, not with disappointment, like supposed to be, but really sensing like this is the ideal structure of reality. And then with Flying Rainbow Lasagna, this is my contribution that gives you an empowerment tool to be able to structure reality towards that divine ideal. The pamphlet and how your life is supposed to be structured within that pamphlet, and who you're supposed to be and what it's supposed to be. Oops, sorry, I just made noises putting my sculpture down. To be embodied here. What is our life supposed to be like in being here? So you're supposed to be in a total real-time rapport with not only the sun, which is our beautiful, loving emanator in the sky. That's the biggest one, the loudest instrument in the cosmic orchestra right now, but also with all of the stars who are all part of this amazing network of light, and with the galactic central supermassive black hole, which is like the conductor, the glue that holds it all together, the conductor that says, you play over there, you not so loud, you get ready, it's about time to now hit it, get going. And the orchestration and organization of all of these synchronized harmonic thought waves that are what creates life, and even beyond our individuated galaxy, but into the many, many, many systems of galaxies that are part of an even much, much larger conglomerate of consciousness. You are supposed to be connected to that the whole entire time that you're here, never feeling abandoned, never feeling lost, never feeling out of sorts, being completely guided the whole entire time, and being seen the whole entire time. As I speak to many people here, it is through a layer of trauma that is defined as abandonment. I'm like, God, like, where are you? Does anybody know? Does anybody care? Like, I'm having all these problems down here. Like, someone is sick, someone is starving, I have to pay my Geico bill. All of these things are not okay. I'm being lighthearted because I'm never mocking the things that are not okay. We face a lot of challenges here, and there's an enormous amount, very real, very profound suffering that is not okay. And many people go into this sense of disappointment, disillusionment, and abandonment, where they wonder, does anybody know? Does anybody care? Is there anybody up there? And the answer is yes, yes, and yes. And they're up there is trying very, very much to hear and perceive and respond effectively to down here or in here. Genetic blockages. Imagine if, like, you've got your phone is like dead battery, can't hear anything. Or what if the volume is turned all the way down and someone else is like shouting into the phone, like, I told you to turn right, or I told you to, change your life in this way, like turn this way, turn that way. And you're like, I'm sorry, I can't hear you, it's very loud in here, or whatever is the problem. Poor reception, not being able to actually hear the cosmic guidance. How does this relate to the endocannabinoid system? I know I jump around a lot, but this is good. You're going to get there with me. Okay. Light emits from a star and goes in one direction. Let's draw it for you. Clear everything out first. Then choose the right color. I draw this in the path of light all the time. Please join my class. I'm overjoyed to be able to share it with you. That is supposed to be the sun. I don't know if you can even tell. It's like a child's drawing. The sun. I drew it with crayons, everyone. Okay, the sun. And then these are my symbols for light waves. I hope you can see that on your screen because it's yellow. It might not show up that much. But this is the traditional model, not the way that I usually draw it for path of light. An emission of a light wave, which is made out of many, many photons. Here's a little dot that represents a photon, and that photon is moving in waveforms. But remember, I'm going to scribble all over your whole screen. You've got all of these different waveforms moving like that, and moving like this, and moving like this. So you've got a lot of waveforms moving in all sorts of different directions. And I'm just talking about one particular waveform and one particular photon, keeping things simple. But you've got a piece of light that is emanated from the sun. And if it doesn't interact with anything, it goes to infinity. Here's my symbol for infinity. It goes infinitely away from the sun. Remember the echolocation? It doesn't meet anything. It doesn't echo off of a speck of dust. a planet, a person, an organism, a clank metal spaceship, nothing. It doesn't hit anything that is in the physical material reality, and it does not bounce back. And when I draw this in the path of light, here's what is new, but I don't want to confuse you. Here is the sun or the star or the many, many stars. There's a plasma being. Here is singularity, the central convergence point that is at the center of the star, at the center of every photon. Here is the photon that is overlapping that singularity. So this also speaks to my work as lasagna, the truthfulness of the comprehension of the truthfulness rather, of this concept that singularity is single by nature. And there is the singularity at the center of every single photon, every single sun star. And what does that model as? It models as this. This is actually the overlappingness of every single photon here at the center and every single star over here at the periphery. If I change my color to red, every single star. That's one big giant overlappingness that we have there. And in my new model of being able to show this new diagram, you do not have one photon that kind of flings itself away from the sun star endlessly in one direction. What you have is the photon stays home, and you have a ballooning outward of this fabric of space, time, and consciousness. And I'm kind of drawing this as a ruffle of a fabric. I hope you can kind of see that, like here's the, grid-like nature of space-time consciousness, just trying to get you to have a sense of this being like a ribbon, a ruffle, a convolution, a space, not merely like a line, like a very, very skinny line, so that you've got this sense of a very convoluted, I said that again, ruffled, rippled surface. That is the surface of reality that is coming out. So that is like the advanced stuff. And I don't want to intimidate anybody by sharing that with you. I want to whet your appetite or make you hungry for even more really good, cool stuff. That is what I talk about in Path of Light. And then in Path of Light, when there is an interaction with the photon and an aspect of materiality, what happens is that ballooning out, this thing ballooned outward, but what happens is the balloon gets smaller and smaller and smaller until it neutralizes or collapses inward. And that is the same as this other model where sometimes a photon interacts with, here's one of my quite well-known stick figures that I always assure you guys, I do have drawing skills. I can draw a real person. I draw the stick figures because these are very, very difficult little electronic tools to work with. But when you have a photon or a piece of light that bounces off of a person or a thing, it's not just that it hits your skin and then bounces back to the sun. It comes inside of you and becomes a part of your circulatory system of light. You have a circulatory system of light that is part of your neurology. It is also part of your thought structure. So it flows through your brain. It also flows down your spine. It also flows out to your peripheral nerves. It also flows into your eyes and into your retinas. It flows through your digestive tract, because sometimes I'm holding up my drink over here. My drink doesn't have glucose in it, but imagine that it does. Glucose that goes into your body is solidified light. So the light goes into your digestive system. And then this whole entire experience of being alive and having light flow through you, this whole entire experience, which I'm now making a blue color, gets broadcast back to the sun. Basically, that's what your hard drives are. When you send that experience back to the sun, you're like, okay, here's the example of it. The sun came and photosynthesized. It made a bunch of stuff. That's a plant. This is just a very good direct example. The plant made some sugars. The sugars went into my mouth. I chomped them up. I put them in my belly. I put them in my digestive tract. And then they went into my blood supply. And that light in my blood supply is sustaining the cognitive abilities and perceptual abilities of my body. And then I, like a broadcaster, am sending that experience back to the sun. Not just chomp, 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 this food tastes so good, but everything that I'm doing after I chomp, chomp, chomp. So this is big, and it also relates to, I have a whole teaching about food and eating mindfully. And eating mindfully means you turn off the TV, you turn off the Netflix, and don't do your emails. Sometimes I cheat because my life is crazy. Sometimes I'm eating while I do my emails or preparing for class, but ideally, you sit for 5 minutes and you focus on the tastes, textures, and the actual ingestion of that food, and you meditate your food. You meditate it back to the sun. You're like this is what peanut butter tastes like this is what avocado tastes like this morning I made a really nice hemp seed porridge. This is what hemp seed porridge tastes like. Oh, this is so good. And then that experience is broadcast back to the sun, and then that is received by the sun and the stars, and they're like, okay, that's what it feels like to be an embodied human eating that stuff. And believe me, animals are doing this all the time. Animals, like a ruminant that is eating grass is literally eating solidified sunlight in the grass, and as it's chewing and chewing and chewing, it is broadcasting that back to the sun. So it's like, that's what it's like to go down there, become a blade of grass, get eaten by a cow, and be the cow that is eating the grass. Or my dog. I'm not against meat eaters at all, even though I honestly told you what I ate for breakfast, but then I did eat meat for lunch. The dog is like, chomp, 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 I'm going to eat a gopher or whatever it is, whatever's their favorite food. And this is, the gopher is like, this is the experience of being eaten by a dog. And the dog was like, this is the experience of eating a gopher. And it all is broadcast back to the sun. There's no judgment on this, actually. And I'm in these levels of pure energy and pure abstraction beyond anthropomorphic levels of moralism, ethics, senses of self-righteousness or judgment of others, or any of the value systems that are placed on food. It is the ingestion of light. Eating food is the ingestion of light, and eating physical food right now is the end result of our need to have an intermediary between ourselves as light beings and the direct sun and stars and neurology that is gifting us this beautiful food, because we were genetically degraded and lost our capacity to eat light directly. I wanted to say capacity to photosynthesize, but the process that we go through in ingesting light directly is slightly different than the process of biological photosynthesis that a plant experiences. Take a Path of Light class. It's amazing. I talk all about photosynthesis and the bending and warping of the fabric of space-time at tiny little levels of the reality, physicality structure of how molecular bondings happen and then unbond and then happen in greater levels of complexity to be able to create the starches and sugars that we know as glucose. The plants are the geniuses doing these amazing dances of the reality structure of time to be able to create glucose. Then we eat the plants. But we used to be able to receive all of the information and sustaining ideas, sustenance, from the sun and the stars directly into our bodies, without the need of having to eat the piano. What do you mean, eat the piano? When I play a note on my piano, you eat the music, but you don't eat the actual piano keys. That would be very crunchy. And then you would have no more piano. This is the definition of what we do with our plants right now. A strawberry grows. It takes however long and however much expertise and effort to grow a beautiful strawberry or the plant and the leaves. And then in 5 seconds, we pick it up, chomp it up, eat it, and put it inside of ourselves. No more strawberry. All right. That's very, very different than what we used to do in the time when we were light eaters, which is what I call ancient or concurrent Atlantis. It is the time that I actually emanate from when I lived before the degradation of human consciousness and the human genetic degradation. Hold on a moment. We created beautiful, extensive gardens that sustained us, but not in the same way that we create gardens here now. I'm not in judgment of you. I love you. I love your gardens, and I love my own garden. And I'm on an adventure also of sprouting microgreens and learning all about how seeds sprout and grow, and the creation of food, sustaining food crops by growing these little tiny plants that are this tall and then eating them. We used to grow plants just for their song, like the way that we now have a violin or a piano just for its song. We don't have it so that I crunch up the violin and put it in my tummy and digest it. The energy goes into my ears. Okay, I just got a notification. I wasn't sure if I would go until 3:45 or if I could go until 4:30 or later. I could go until 4:30 or later. So that's actually good. I have like a little bit more breathing space, not to be so dramatic about it. But you guys know me. I always have many different angelic assignments going on my plate every day. So that is good. I don't have to edit my presentation or go so fast. I'm like, I swear I haven't had caffeine. I'm just going very, very fast to fit things in. Can cool it down now a little bit. We used to be sustained by the music that is emitted as the life force energy of plants and animals around us. In ancient concurrent Atlantis, we created beautiful, complex, you would call it sacred geometry, but we could just call them polygonal structures that contain a variety of plants. And every plant is an arabesque, a dancer, making a beautiful movement over time and emitting sounds. And that is what sustained us as a frequency food. So they do have these things right now that are like these little electrodes that you can put onto the actual, let me get my plant, I'll jump up again. Every time I'm jumping up in class. You guys know this guy already. This is my orchid. This is my orchid. I show my class the orchid all the time. Look at how healthy and great it's looking. And thank you to my lovely friend Lita who gave this to me when she visited. This orchid is emitting a music, but I don't eat its leaves. I think they're poisonous to humans. But what I do eat is its beautiful music. It emits a beautiful waveform that is nourishing and sustaining to me. And I encourage all of us in this time place to please have beautiful house plants around you. Even if you live in an urban environment or very, very small room or micro apartment, please keep a little geranium on the windowsill, grow a little something, be in rapport with that plant, because plants are incredibly beautiful, complex consciousnesses. They're not dead, stupid, or whatever, innate, inert. They have so much to give to us. And there's this beautiful, very gentle consciousness energy. They watch you during your day. So that orchid watches me while I do my painting, do my music over here, do my lasagna dancing and my exercises, totally knows what's going on in my life, and emits this beautiful music in response to that. And in my most receptive states, I'm like, oh, like I feel that beautiful music coming from the plant. And I have plants on my windowsill in the other room too. And I have my microgreen sprouts outside on a shelf because our weather is above freezing right now. These plants are in a rapport with you. That's what I'm trying to say. There's an energy connection. As you are a being of pure light, my plant is a being of pure light too, that we are all ingesting light. And at that time, we were able to ingest light directly, not have to actually eat the piano, but to eat the light, the music, the beautiful self-expression that is made by the plant itself. And then with the genetic degradation, we became more, I don't want to say the word brutal or whatever, but death became a reality in our world. Genetic degradation was the invention of death. Not only did people die, we needed to eat other stuff in order to stay alive. That meant somebody had to die. This is why there is so much moralism and ethical judgment about what organisms you are killing in order to eat and stay alive, how many of them and under what circumstances. Please leave the baggage behind. I love you profoundly. Please leave the baggage behind. All of the food and plants and animals that we have right here now is or are a gift to sustain us from God, from the creator and upholder of the cosmos and infrastructure, from the light that is the sun and the stars itself, from our planet, beautiful planet that we are living on and within, and from the material world. Receive your gifts in gratitude and eat the things that are proper and righteous for your body. Please do not judge others for their dietary restrictions or for their dietary requirements. Like I told you, my dog is going to eat a gopher. She's going to eat a gopher. She's a dog. It's what she's made for. And a plant, a bird. Birds usually eat bird seeds, but they also do eat worms and insects. Made to eat what you're made to eat. So please just be loving and accepting of whatever is your basic nature. Eat it and celebrate it and meditate your food, meaning you send it back to the sun and the stars as Like if the bird is like this, like, like I'm eating this juicy worm. This is what it's like to eat an earthworm. It's so good. They're like, it's just as exactly as like slimy as I like it. And the sun is like, check on the clipboard. Yep, bird likes to eat the worm. This is good. But of course, we are moving out of that level of reality as we are ascending. We are returning to our most heavenly state. Heavenly meaning the sun and the stars are in the heavens. Most light oriented, most stellar state means that we are going to be able to eat that light directly, because light is not just this impersonal thing. Again, the light that is coming to you from the sun and the stars is custom made, tailored for exactly what you need. The exact right angle or trajectory is coming into your eye to be able to give you everything that you need: the love, the ideas, the inspiration, the consciousness, the sustenance, the regenerative life force energy to be able to keep going in your life. So all of this is us in a sea, ocean of awareness, a sea of consciousness, and also a sea of love. And we really must receive that love in gratitude. Right now, be in radical self-compassion and love and forgiveness. You're a physical eater of stuff, physical stuff, and you eat your foods. And what do I mostly caution people? Stay away from genetically modified crapola, because that is unnatural stuff. It's an aberrant, it's a monstrosity. I clutch my pearls. It's not supposed to exist. It plays horrible music. It is not finely tuned music. The genetically modified corn does not play life-giving music. So please, as much as you can, attempt to eat substances and ingredients that are not genetically modified. Attempt to grow heirloom seeds in your garden and share them with others so that you're able to maintain non-genetically modified, non-polluted, pure music of love. And also, whatever you eat, receive it in gratitude. That is the blessing of it. Recognize that it is a beautiful love that is being given to you, and broadcast it back to the sun and the stars. So whatever, even if you're eating a chocolate cookie, you're like, I don't know if Aurora would approve of this chocolate cookie. I'm not in judgment of you and your food, please. Eat your chocolate cookie. The only rule is I want you to taste all of it. Feel the sense of it in your teeth and in your mouth, and like kind of like swallowing it down, and broadcast that back to the sun. Don't eat the chocolate cookie and put it on your hard drive and then die, and then give it to the sun and say, hi, I'm finally back home. Here's all the chocolate cookies that I've eaten. The sun is like, that's great. I wish you had given me all of this before. I would have prevented you from dying. You got it? So also, I have done a lot of positive stuff with making wonderful inner remembrances of profoundly good food. And I encourage you to do this too. You broadcast back to the sun with this really very focused presence of tasting the textures of everything that you're eating and ingesting. And you can have a record. I joke with you guys about this. Vegans, don't be insulted by this, but the best fried chicken that I ever ate was like more than 10 years ago. It was at my friend's holiday party, and they had like marinated the chicken in buttermilk, and they had done this extensive breading thing, and then they fried it in bacon fat, and they hid the wrapper because they didn't want anyone to know that they fried it in bacon fat. And I found the wrapper in the garbage. I'm like, this is why this is so good. All right, I'm joking. But it was perfectly fried, perfectly crispy, so good. And I'm sitting there in their kitchen and eating it. And I just said to everyone, like, don't even talk to me. I just need to imprint upon this wonderful fried chicken. And again, I usually eat things that are like grilled and very healthy. Eating, like lavish bacon fat fried chicken is kind of rare for me. All right. But that doesn't matter. I've still got this memory of it. And I think that you guys can probably even feel I think like Aurora, I think I can taste Aurora's fried chicken. Yes. And I also joke with you guys that is one of the fun activities, recreational activities that we do in these higher dimensional states, of sharing these amazing imprints and remembrances that we have of our favorite food. Like for me, it might be that fried chicken, but for someone else, it might be like a very particular soup or stew that is unique to their culture, or whatever it is, whatever is your thing that is the most pinnacle of culinary achievement. And you share it with others through your pineal gland and your telepathy, and you can literally sustain others. It's not just a false sensation. It's a real sustenance. It's a real sensation. Let me read what Pedro says. I could be vegan, but I haven't found a cheeseburger or pizza flavored plants. It's hard to find substitutes for these very, very favorite things, I'm telling you. And I don't eat like regular pizza anymore because so much of the wheat is genetically modified. I really started to limit myself from being exposed to that in 2006, but I make really cool almond flour and coconut flour crust pizzas, with all these beautiful organic toppings. So find a way, if you can, to make positive foods that still have the same tastes and textures as all the things that we love. But I love traditional bagels, pizzas, croissants, but I don't eat them all the time. But I did, we're talking food now, I'm getting so hungry. Where I lived in San Diego, most recently, there was a French bakery, and I do not eat pastries very often, but I went there and I'm like, this is going to be like my one pastry of the year. And it was this amazing flaky croissant that had this like inner almond filling and something like crunchy on top of it. The textures, the tastes, I ate it outside in the sunshine. Cheeky was right underneath the table, eating all the crumbs that fell and shimmied down as I was eating. And it's just the moment, the experience. So yeah, when you're eating, you're not just eating calories, you're eating your environment or the ambiance of what you're eating. That's why I also encourage you, turn off the TV. TV is an irritant. Try not to be focused on your emails and your responsibilities, just because it kind of takes you away from the focus and from the beauty of it. And also, if you can, look at something beautiful while you eat your amazing almond croissant or whatever it is, and really make it a refined daily experience to do these things. This is actually from a different lesson, but it's relevant. What is more relevant here, because what I have emphasized in my notes is about planetary ascension, and in capital marks here, you are personally involved in a biofeedback loop with the sun involving food, chlorophyll, and your intestines as a refinery of energy. So energy comes from the sun, it is captured and integrated with a leaf of a plant. Through the practice of photosynthesis, it becomes glucose. Glucose goes inside of your intestines, goes inside of your belly, and then becomes integrated into you. But that's not the end of the journey. What happens next is you then broadcast that experience back to the sun stars, and they all get the message. That's what's going on in that organism's life, and all of that is essential and positive. What does this have to do with the endocannabinoid system, as I'm finally looping around to be able to tell you about all of this? In our body, scientists presumed for a very, very long amount of time, in the same way that we see light that is emanated from our sun star as being emitted and then going off whiz in one long direction, like this journey over here. Scientists also presumed that you had a neurological journey that was similar, where you're coming from, here's the stimulus over here, and then it's going to go along a neural pathway over here, and it's going to go to your brain over here, a unidirectional road, as opposed to recognizing that it is a bidirectional road, and your nerves are supposed to be a two-way highway. How are they a two-way highway? When you have a healthy amount of endocannabinoids in your system, your body and nerves act as a biofeedback loop and a two-way highway. Hold on one moment while I pause the recording. In order for your endocannabinoid system to be functioning properly and optimally, and have your nerves be two-way highways as opposed to unidirectional one-way streets, what you need to do is have enough endocannabinoids in your diet. Endocannabinoids have traditionally been in our food supply up until the end of World War II, when the plant was outlawed and hemp farming became no longer a viable aspect of industrial farming. Up until that point, it was very normal for farmers to grow hemp. Our country, United States, was based upon hemp. It built the giant tall ships of the 1800s that had many, many sails. The white sails, the cloth was all made out of hemp. Many, many clothings were made out of hemp. Bibles were made out of hemp. And all of the ropes for the rigging on all of the tall ships was made out of hemp. It was such a valuable crop that literally hemp farmers could pay the United States government their taxes in bales of hemp. And it was a non-psychoactive crop. What they would do, though, you can look this up, is farmers that were growing for fiber did not need to use the leaves of the plant. And so what they would do is strip off all the leaves, use the stalks for fiber, and then feed those leaves, often in a fermented form, to their animals, the pigs, the cows, and the chickens that humans would eat. This is called silage, S-I-L-A-G-E. It is still sometimes performed on some farms with other plant materials, other vegetative materials that are slightly fermented and then fed back to the animals. But it's the point being, when animals eat the hemp plant, Those cannabinoids go into the animal's flesh and milk and eggs, which are then consumed by humans and become the precursors for the neurotransmitters that are in our own bodies that are part of the endocannabinoid system. The endocannabinoid system is a cell-to-cell and neurotransmitter signaling metabolism. Cell to cell meaning I'm a cell and here's my membrane, I'm a cell and here's my membrane, and we talk to each other using chemicals known as endocannabinoids. Neurological meaning I am a neuron. A neurological signal travels on my axon over here and comes to the end of this nerve. Then it jumps across the synaptic gap in a molecular, biomechanical, molecular, and chemical reaction and hits the beginning of the next nerve. So the impulse becomes biochemistry, jumps across the giant synaptic gap or cleft, and then keeps going on to the next neuron, a journey all around your body. So we've got signaling from the sun and the stars that's supposed to come to us, go through our neurology, and it's supposed to be broadcast back, but our talking mind shuts it down. Then we also have within our bodies signals that are supposed to go in two directions, from my brain to my foot and from my foot to my brain, but often only go in one direction, let's say from my brain to my foot, because there's not enough endocannabinoids in my body to go within that synaptic gap and change and transform the behavior of that biochemical signal that is going around the body. A lot of the diseases that people face after World War II are a direct result of being starved of endocannabinoids within your own body. It has been made taboo. It was made illegal, illegal to grow certain crops, illegal to consume certain foods, and definitely taken out of the food supply. And since World War II, we see a huge increase in many of the autoimmune and inflammatory chronic diseases, and also diseases including cancer. Cannabinoids reduce cancer because of the cell-to-cell signaling. That cannabinoids literally go to cells that are not well formed or that are old or deformed, and it says to them, look, we're going to have a little talk. You're not needed anymore, and you're going to have to self-destruct. And the cell is like, wah, wah, okay, like let's go into a state of non-existence over here. And that's positive and healthy. You want that going on in your body when cells are old or deformed. But that doesn't happen when you have a starvation of these particular cannabinoids. I didn't mention cannabinoids are found in human breast milk. And it is actually one of the first things that happens when a baby latches onto its mother's breast soon after birth. The very first milk that comes out and the subsequent breast milk that sustains the baby inoculates the body of the baby with endocannabinoids throughout the digestive tract, literally along with many other probiotics and many other nourishing life substances, gives the baby the capacity to actually learn how to absorb and process and digest food. Cannabinoids are intimately related to our capacity to take an inert object, chomp it up with our teeth, put it in our body, and actually absorb it as light. But the main relevant aspect of our teaching here today is about the analogy of being able to create a biofeedback loop when you have proper neurotransmitters available in your physical body form. When you don't have those neurotransmitters available, it's a one-way street. And what that means is pain signals often just go without ever stopping. So let's say, ow, 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 my big toe hurts. That's a signal that's coming from my toe all the way up the neurological signals that then go to my brain. And my brain keeps hearing, ow, 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 my toe is hurting. But when my brain gets the message, what's supposed to happen is my brain is supposed to send a signal back to the toe. It says, thank you very much. Thank you for telling me that. And I don't need this signal anymore. I know the toe is hurting us. Let's make it better. When people return their diet to a state of balance by eating dietary cannabis, it often reduces these chronic pain signals. People all of a sudden feel a lot better, not just because their inflammation goes down, but also because they're able to now have their neurology be a two-way highway where the brain can give biofeedback. Just like when you meditate and you're not just giving in your hard drive at the end of your life, the sun can mitigate its signals to you and be like, ah, I see things are not going that well. And you're driving on the road and you're about to hit a brick wall. Let's change that for you. The brain also gets the opportunity when the endocannabinoid system is active and effective to be able to say, I hear that your big toe is hurting. I'm going to fix that for you now. We can close down these pain signals. And that is the main benefit to having a healthy endocannabinoid system. How can you do that in this modern world? I'm a huge proponent of raw cannabis juicing. Again, I use THC in all these different things, and I never want to give only a partial slice of my life because I want people to be active, empowered in the full level of information that you receive. But I do not necessarily recommend that every age group or every profession or every person with their delicate psychology and emotional fluctuations ingest THC that is psychoactive. It's not for everybody. It's not for babies. It might not be for someone who's 90 years old, and it might not be for someone who needs to perform brain surgery, fly a plane, drive a bus, or do something that's extremely responsible that involves a ton of reflexes, memory, and other administrative higher faculties, all right? But THC can be wonderful, good stuff. Raw THC does not affect your brain, does not affect your cognitive abilities. It literally is something that cannot cross the blood-brain barrier due to its molecular structure. So cannabis and hemp are both, the cannabinoids that are in them behave and are structured differently on a molecular level when they are dried or heated than when they are eaten raw. So if you think back to my original sharing of China being the land of hemp, it does not necessarily mean that everybody was smoking a joint and getting high. It means that they ate it raw. They ate the hemp seed. Hemp seeds are not psychoactive, but they also would eat a mixture of both the hemp seeds and the flowering tops and the leaves all mixed up together raw. And when you do that, your body gets this amazing super nutrition that helps against inflammation, chronic diseases, truly nourishes the body, and truly makes it possible to live at a much higher level within these biological containers. Raw, either hemp leaves or cannabis leaves, like put into a blender or put into a slow, non-friction creating, masticating juicer. And also sprouted hemp seeds. So if you live in one of the United States where it is legal to grow your own cannabis as a householder or as a medical patient, I would encourage you to grow your own non-genetically modified cannabis varieties, grow enough of them or large enough plants so that you can harvest the fan leaves, which are separate from the stalks and the flowers. That the flowers also contain a lot of psychoactive medicine, but the best way to do juicing is grow the fan leaves. Grow it in the same way that you would grow cucumbers in your garden, and then juice it like a vegetable. It is literally why I moved to California and is how I take care of and manage chronic epilepsy. I do it through the raw CBD juice and also through some CBD capsules that I'm able to find. And also sometimes creating my own medicine too. So I found such a profound change in my body structure and my ability to inhabit this body with all of its bumps and bruises over when I moved here to California about 10 years ago. Such a amazing biological transformation at having the dietary raw cannabis. Now, unfortunately, because of the laws that started post-World War II in our world and in most nations around this world, the plant was heavily, I don't want to say, it was persecuted. The plant was persecuted. It was seen as only a drug of abuse and seen to have no nutritional value. Farmers stopped growing hemp. Our economy became, United States economy became based more on corn and also less strongly, but still on things like soy and wheat. And farmers stopped that practice of putting the silage fermented hemp into the chicken feed or their pig slop or whatever it is that they're feeding their animals. And the quality of the meats and the milk and the eggs went down, so that now when people were eating those substances, they would be finding a lot of digestive issues and inflammatory responses in their body. You can do your own thing in order to reverse or respond to this by growing your own healthy cannabis in your house and then juicing it. And when your garden is abundant, you save the juice in an ice cube tray and then take out the ice cubes when they're frozen and store them in a jar for long-term storage. And that is what I do. I grow a certain amount of plants. When my garden is abundant, run it through the juicer, pour it into an ice cube tray, freeze it overnight, pop out all the cubes, put it in a mason jar and close the top tightly. And then in the wintertime or in between my crops, I have those frozen cubes to eat and drink one a day. I've got them in my freezer right now. I should run and get one. They are from what I grew right now. It's February here, just turning February, still a little bit cold. And I'm working off of the plants that I grew last year when it was nice and warm. So you take care of yourself in these cycles, and you have to kind of be taking care of yourself, because I think we're not yet in the world, although I envision this beautiful ideal world where we will be able to go to the grocery store in the same way that you get a pound of string beans, just pick them up and put them in a bag and take it home. We'll have that with cannabis leaves. We'll have that with this availability of this plant, hemp or cannabis leaves or whatever you would like to call it. It's the same plant. And be able to just buy a pound of it, the way you buy a pound of string beans, and then bring it home and juice it. We're not at that level yet, especially in California. There are all of these licenses. It's very, very monitored by the government. It's heavily taxed by the government. It is not that available. So there are very, very few places where you can just go to a juice bar, and as you can get wheatgrass juice or buckwheat juice or some of those broccoli sprouts or something like that, hard to find it commercially available. Grow your own, make your own. If you are in one of the United States or a country around the world, welcome international listeners. I love you and I hug you, because I know there's lots of beautiful people who tune in from all over the world. I know we've got like Greece, Scotland, Trish is here from Lebanon, beautiful people from all over. I love you and I value you for being here in my class so much. Oh, and Anna Pom, who is in Singapore. That's why I don't like to say like in the Far East, in the West, and then this, like none of this makes sense as a way of being able to talk about location or culture anymore. Sprout hemp seeds. Sprouted hemp seeds is an amazing way of being able to get raw cannabis in your diet legally, because I don't want anyone to have any problems with the sheriff knocking on your door or someone sniffing and saying like, what are you growing at home in your garden or in your basement or something like that. And it's something that's so available. I was able to do it just living in a little apartment on my windowsill without any special equipment at all when I was in a different circumstance last year. So you must get viable hemp seeds. And these are the type of hemp seeds that still have the shell, not just the white meat that is in the inside, the nut meat or the seed, whatever you would call it, must be viable. Many hemp seeds are sterilized either through a process of radiation or steam heating, specifically so that they will not grow. This is war on plant, definitely, and war on your neurological endocannabinoid system, and war on the network of light that is in the sun, with the sun and the stars in the sky. But you can fight effectively against that suppression and reduction technology by accessing, I can send you links if you're interested, guys, or make them available somehow. There's two different suppliers that I have found that are local to my area, one of which has Polish hemp seeds that you can buy a little bag of them for like $20, and one of which is a United States supplier where you get a giant 50-pound sack. I can't even make a big enough, it's off the screen, it's a giant sack that's like $300. It's an investment, but that is 50 pounds. It's enough for you and your neighbors for at least a year. You got it? So if you want to be able to do this, go in on it with your neighbors, split the cost, and then all that you need are these seed sprouting trays. So if you've ever have done sprouts like sprouting beans or garbanzo beans or chia seeds or something like that, those do well in jars with a loose lid on top. Hemp seeds do not do that well as a jar sprouting technique. They do much better in a large, flat, rectangular container that usually has an insert that is mesh and then a solid insert underneath it. So you don't have to soak the seeds. you just put them onto the, oh, actually I do, I soak them overnight. Then as they start to open up and become viable, I put them onto the mesh, and then I spritz them and I put a humidity dome over them. And over the next couple of days, they start to open up and then the green shoot starts to come out. And basically a couple of days after the green shoot comes out, if you can keep them alive, you eat them. And that gives you not only CBD, which is one aspect of the vast array of phytochemicals that are known as cannabinoids, but it also gives you CBG, cannabigerol, which is a precursor to CBD and THC, very positive neurological chemical, and a bunch of other positive chemicals that are so good for your digestion, cell-to-cell signaling, metabolic health, immune system, anti-cancer, so many good things. And the only challenge with sprouting hemp seeds is that, like any kind of sprouts, it is labor intensive. So it's not that expensive, but it is expensive in your time and your attention, because every morning you're going to have to check your sprouts. You're going to have to spritz them, make sure that they don't have any mold or rot, maybe spray them with hydrogen peroxide. And then every day you're going to have to be managing your sprouts and your trays, and then eventually putting them in the windowsill so that you get sunlight on them. So something that might be a little bit daunting if you're not an expert, or if you don't have a lot of time in your life, but still a way to be able to get these wonderful raw cannabinoids into your diet legally. And another thing you can also do is ask around and see if anybody in your area is farming either CBD or hemp or cannabis legally. And you can juice the leaves from someone else's garden, but you must talk to them and get an honest response as to whether it is organically grown or whether there are any sprays that are put onto the leaves, because you are not helping your health if they spray a chemical concoction onto the leaves and then you take that, juice it and concentrate it as juice cubes, then it could contain many, many contaminants. So you must make certain that they're not spraying anything or putting anything in the root levels, fungicides, copper, sulfur, blah, blah, blah. Any of these things, a lot of commercial grows do that. So it's not always easy to find, but I have been able to, at times in my life, connect with hobbyist growers who are totally happy to share their fan leaves, because the fan leaves are mostly considered to be disposable or discardable, as they do not contain that much of the valuable sap that is what the flowers contain. As an aside, you can also make wonderful good use of dietary cannabis raw out of the flowers, but I use it differently. So when the crop is fully mature and it makes the flowers where most of the cannabinoids and resins are concentrated, you pick those flowers and just put them without any processing, totally fresh and raw, into clean mason jars. Lids are on tight, stick them directly in the freezer, like within an hour of picking them. And that preserves them for a very long time. And then I use those as smoothies, where you must use something that is a fatty emulsifier, such as coconut milk or almond milk, or if you use water, put a scoop of coconut oil or a nut butter in there, because all of these cannabinoids are fat soluble, not water soluble. That means that in order for them to be bioavailable, you need to have a fat mixed with them. Mix it up with some almond milk or coconut milk and a beautiful, delicious fruit of your choice. So here is my manna from heaven: beautiful organic papaya, cacao nibs or unsweetened chocolate, the raw frozen cannabis flowers, and then throw some hemp seeds in there for protein, because that's really, really good stuff. And then if you've got it, like a nice lemon, and you can peel off the rind if it's just a regular commercial lemon, because there's chemicals usually sprayed on them, but you can also grate the rind if it's a nice organic one from your local tree, and just brightens up all the flavors. Blend it up in your Ninja Bullet. But here's the thing: do not heat your smoothie, because if you heat your smoothie, it will become psychoactive, and then it might make you feel psychedelic, meaning that you might not be worthy of driving on the road or doing many responsible tasks that you might need to do in your life. So if you need to do some responsible tasks and your smoothie gets heated up, then it just might not be safe. And I'm very, very safe and appropriate in everything that I teach to everyone. Raw cannabis juice, when it is done properly, because it is not psychoactive, is safe for children to drink. A baby could drink it. It will not get the baby high. And if your child had like profound autoimmune diseases or cancer, I would say, yes, give it raw cannabis juice, and that will help it out immensely. There is no contraindication in that. It doesn't harm any pharmaceutical treatments. Many people take pharmaceuticals to help their health right now. It is essential. It doesn't contravene or interact with it badly. Also safe for elders. If you've got your aged parents living with you, if they've got arthritis, cancer, all of these, chronic life diseases, digestive issues, inflammatory bowel diseases, all of these things, feed them raw cannabis juice, and it will not get them high, and they will not suddenly develop a taste for the music of Jimi Hendrix or anything like that. And also, the way I do it in my life, I've always got my juice with my raw cannabis cube in it. And then I know I can take that, I'll drive to work, I'll have my cannabis juice with me. I'm not concerned about whether I am roadworthy or whether I am incapacitated due to, excessive cannabinoids in my system. Raw cannabis will not get you high, but also cautions against mixing it with mango juice, which does have an activation effect, which can make it more of a mental effect. So don't mix it with mangoes unless you want the Jimi Hendrix experience. All right, good. And I'm a little bit lighthearted there. I'm never judgmental. I actually think cannabis is a huge ally, not only for our health, but also for spiritual attainment and consciousness cultivation and the capacity to return to being a pure light eater and having your light body in optimum functioning. Let me get to some of these questions over here. Melissa says, and Melissa, thank you for being here. And I'm just going to begin scrolling. Thank you for being here. Really appreciate you. You're so consistent in your participation in my classes and your great ideas. Melissa says, lack of cannabinoids remind me of DC direct current versus AC. Very, very much, very, very apt analogy. So direct current versus alternating current, there are big changes that happen in the quality of electricity when it is direct current versus alternating current. And electricity is the path of light, part of this larger network of light and network of consciousness that is not moving at the speed of light, but still does represent impulses that contain light and information in the same way. It is part of the spectrum of waveforms that we call light and electromagnetism. So absolutely related to that. And Adam says the cannabinoid needs to bind to some form of fat for it to be psychoactive. Yes, yes, yes. In fact, it needs to bind to a fat in order to be bioavailable, meaning entering into the cells, as our cells are covered with a cell membrane that is fatty and hydrophobic. Hydrophobic means it's afraid of water. I'm afraid of water, but it also means water rolls off of it, like water off a duck's back. So in order to penetrate and go inside of your cell membranes, the cannabis needs to have a fat to ride along with. And I like coconut milk a lot, but you can also use almond milk, or you can just take a spoonful of almond butter, stick it in there in with your smoothie. This is why you can't just make a cannabis tea. For example, if you took a bunch of the leaves and you just kind of dunked them in water, you would not actually get the beneficial chemicals that are cannabinoids that you want to go into you, although you would get some chlorophyll and greenness and other stuff into your body, not the actual cannabinoids. And Adam also goes on to say, cooking the cannabis at a certain temperature in butter, oil, etc., will activate it. That is correct. The activation process is known as decarboxylation. Now, pretend that I'm a cannabis molecule. This little thing that is hanging off of me over here is called the carboxyl. That is a larger form of molecular structure that is acidic. So thc-A is THC in its raw form. CBD-A is CBD in its raw form. They've got this little extra carboxyl. When you heat or dry the cannabis plant material, the carboxyl falls off. My arm just fell off, everyone, ow. But now I'm small enough to go across the blood-brain barrier and actually go into your brain and affect your mind and your cognitive processes. So this is why raw cannabis is so positive and healthy and great for the body. It does not go into your brain and affect your cognitive processes. It does not give the side effects that many people experience beyond mental side effects of like their eyesight being blurry or their reflexes being slow or any of that stuff that is related to your neurology. But what it does do is saturate the rest of your body and your cellular structure in this positive anti-cancer, anti-inflammatory stuff. So especially if anybody is facing cancer or any family members are, big, because it's a big disease right now, it is safe to give people raw cannabis, even if they're doing traditional oncology, even if they're recovering from surgery. It is an adjunct therapy that's incredibly valuable. And actually, I know a beautiful person who's living across town here who completely superseded her doctor's low prognosis due to pancreatic cancer because of cannabis juice. I shared it with her from my garden, and then I set her up with her own plants, and she takes care of them quite assiduously every day. And she also has done a lot of sprouting and juicing of other positive greens like mung beans, broccoli sprouts, all of these other bitter ash gourds. Like, she does a lot of other juicing. So that's a positive thing that you can do to exacerbate all of this. But the raw cannabis also helps her out. Doctor doesn't know how she can still be here, but she's still here being a wonderful troublemaker. So, I joke about that, like being a far outlier in the bell curve, like you're going to stay alive. Yes. So this is life-giving stuff. This is what this is really supposed to be about. The endocannabinoid system as a cell-to-cell signaling tool in terms of our body of light, and how when we are effectively using diet and raw cannabis, or cell-to-cell signaling also increases with activated cannabis. I have no problem with activated cannabis. It is fantastic, good stuff. Just be careful. If you drink it or smoke it or eat it or whatever, you might not want to drive your car for several hours, or, like I said, do your taxes or whatever, perform brain surgery, because all of those things involve a lot of like hand-eye coordination and memory and administrative skills. So book some time if you're going to do edibles or other stuff like that is activated, but those things can also be very positive. But some patients do find them to be almost overwhelming in the psychedelic nature of what cannabis can make you feel, that it can bring up anxiety and sometimes negative inner experiences or emotional purges that not everybody is ready for. I joke about Jimi Hendrix, but sometimes people feel like anxiety or fear or other forms of discomfort and paranoia that are associated with that. But that also can be from being exposed to genetically modified and also poorly created cannabis, because cannabis is also like a crystal in structure. Where's a crystal? That picks up the residues of what it is grown in and around. And the cannabis, when it's grown like commercially, sometimes it's on these big rows that are not only agriculturally insensitive in their use of pesticides and chemical fertilizers, but also huge amounts of greed, fear, and paranoia. You got to understand, not all of these pot farmers are super happy hippies being all nice and cool to one another. A lot of it is grown on like mafia controlled, very like dark stuff happening around there. And the herb kind of takes on that, that feeling of what it is grown around. It is very, very sensitive to the environment. Grow your own and spit in the bucket. Aurora, spit in the bucket. What are you talking about? When you water your plants, any kind of plants for your food garden, spit in the bucket. I know Trish is going to say urinate in the bucket too, and that's also acceptable. Put your biological fluids into the bucket of water that you are using to water your plants, and the plants will literally respond with a custom tailored array of phytochemicals to be able to complement your needs in your own particular body. We live in an amazing, miraculous world that when we are sensitive to it can give us so much in terms of the sustenance of our health, even while we are here as food eaters and not pure light eaters. This rapport and respectful partnership with both plants and animals that we cultivate for our own sustenance can be so amazing in the life-giving nature of food. So yes, even if you're beautiful student here is going to start a chicken farm or looking into it. If you are starting a chicken farm, then you can also have a rapport with your chickens so that their eggs create a personalized nutrition profile just for you. And I know that some people really, really? Yes, really. And also if you have access to hemp leaves, that is absolutely excellent for chickens to be able to eat. And then your eggs will have another amazing layer of nutrition and positivity to them if you're able to do that. Melissa says, please also mention spitting on your plant. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Melissa. Absolutely, saliva. You can, put saliva on your strawberry plants, whatever is going to be your food crop, whatever it is, not only the plant, the water that you put into them, but also the actual leaves. Princess Cheeky just awoke from her extensive nap. Oh, Cheeky, everybody loves to see you. And we always like to show her at least once per class. This is Cheeky the boss over here, everyone. I know I'm a little silly and lighthearted by doing this, but she's a big part of my life. And she's also she's going to be ready for WALK, but we have about 10 minutes left. But she can kind of tell, her biological clock is saying, you know, soon I'm going to need a little something. We did do exercise before, but we'll need a little something. What is the relationship between this endocannabinoid and getting your big toe to stop hurting and getting the membrane of death to stop hurting? Because that's essentially what's going on. And I don't want to, again, justify the activities of either demons who are literally stuck on the membrane of death because of poor choices that they made, or experimenters and users of time technology who have vaporized themselves and placed themselves on the membrane of death in a way that they don't have a pathway home. That must be acknowledged. What do I mean? The people who used to live on Mars and some of these technology using experimenters, either by accident or on purpose or accidentally on purpose, did different time experiments that literally vaporized themselves or even sometimes their whole cultures or civilizations, kind of like the way that people were flash immolated at Hiroshima in that great tragedy there. You know, a flash of high energy that vaporized their bodies and left them kind of hovering between life and death, in a place that you guys would probably define as the astral realm, but is really this membrane of death. The unresolved motion of their life is still kind of hanging around. And again, ideally in this system of light, you die, here's what happens. You get your life review as your genetic sweater is unfurled. Love, the universal solvent, dissolves your life experience, and you get your math homework back. Red X, red X, red X. What does that mean? Did your math wrong, and that calculation was wrong, and that calculation was wrong. And the calculations are usually emotional calculations. You got it? Things that are left unresolved. Like, I should have called that person. I should have called my mom. Think about that. Everybody call your mom. I'm joking, but I mean it, really. Call your loved ones, I should say, instead. And no offense if anybody's moms are passed on or if they're not available to be able to be spoken with, but call your loved ones and don't leave your emotional issues unresolved, because when you get to the membrane of death and are getting your life review, that's when you're like, you know something, if you had done this or if you had done this, your life would be different. And then it's not a judgment, mean, bad criticism. It is more a sense of the cosmic math teacher in a very neutral way saying, look, I want you to learn, I want you to fix this up. And everybody has this impression. Let me do it better next time. That is the universal thing that happens when the pristine system is going. You look at your review, everything that you should have done better or differently, and you're like, "Aw, let me do it again. I want to try it better." And then you go back to the beginning over here and you try it better, and you try it from a slightly different angle with slightly different choices. And you do improve every time you play the music of your life. You get a little bit better. That is diametrically opposed to anybody who's smashing the keyboard of life. Like, I'm not going to do anything right, and I know I'm supposed to do it this way, and I know I'm supposed to do this better, and I'm not going to do it. That's very, very different. Or that someone who intentionally destroys themselves or their civilization using a type of giant big boom or something like that, ill-conceived time machine or artificial Merkaba that then makes everybody's consciousness instantly vaporized. You don't even kind of know that you're dead, and you get immediately schlumphed, and that's not an accurate word, into the membrane of death, kind of without that opportunity for self-reflection or knowledge that your state has changed. And then the very long, slow unraveling process. And what is this parasitic nature of the consciousnesses that reside extensively on the membrane of death is the sense of, we're always going to need new recruits. We're hungry ghosts. We're always going to need new recruits. Get some of these guys over here to self-destruct or kill them or mash them up in a war, get them onto the membrane of death. And then when they're there, see if we can eat them, and see if we can eat them slowly. None of that is acceptable. What I encourage everyone to do in your personal practice is have strong internal energetic boundaries. Do not allow the peanut gallery or the pooties to talk to you, influence you, or take energy from you, and they are very big joy stealers. So you can be like, sometimes it's from me playing music, playing my music, I'm grooving, this is so great. And then a pootie is like, you're not really very good, and that song sounds like crap, and you're not a real musician, and you should stop using digital samples, and kind of like stealing away your joy. And your shoulders go down, and your face looks like this, and you're like, oh, and you have to be like, no, 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 no. You don't let that happen. You guard your joy, and you guard your food, and you guard your life force energy. Guard your sexual orgasmic energy as well. Let me just drink. Don't allow anything to siphon off your life force energy, including your orgasmic explosions with or without partners, as those are parts of your reality creation, divine partnership over here in embodiment. The pooties are like, they don't have sexual energy anymore, but they would love to be able to get some of yours. Don't let them have it. And focus your energy very intentionally on the processes, people, and events that you would like to bring into being. Adam says, it's super annoying. The pootie thoughts, completely agree. It is one of the things that is not in the brochure. Pointing to the brochure, shaking my head, you know, it's just not the way it's supposed to be. But I want you to know that we will transcend this. This is the ongoing rectification event that is happening in our world right now. And each one of you that is learning more about what Flying Rainbow Lasagna is a part of it. As you are achieving more and more the capacity to send those negative thought forms to entropy. And what that means is, not only do you say like, no, no food for you. These are my energetic boundaries. You don't steal my creative life force energy, even if they're like, we want it, we want it, we want it. You can also send them to entropy. So what does that look like and feel like to me in my practice? And you can also learn a lot more about this in my Flying Rainbow Lasagna, my presentation that I did over Saturday. I call it the manifesto. But basically, sorry, there was a distraction outside and I might need to pause the video for a moment. In my music software, my music has different tracks on the audio. Here's the drums, here's the guitar, here's the sound of a flute. If the flutes are too loud and too high, turn them down. Individual volume, turn them down. In your DNA, if the pooties are too loud, turn down the volume. And this is a more effective thing than like a constant dualistic push and pull, because the more you push and pull, the more they're like, we want more of the energy from you. So even though we do not sit in ignorance of them or denial and be like, la, 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 the pooties aren't there, the best thing to do is turning down the volume of them. And what that feels like is withdrawing energy from them as opposed to giving energy to them. Do not energize them too much with the tendril of your attention, paying attention to them, which is why I don't want to talk about them too much. I don't want to focus our energy on them too much, but we must acknowledge it. And then this also relates to the balance in my life of like 99% of what I talk about is Flying Rainbow Lasagna, and the manifestation of the internal life experience that you have into your external reality as it relates to positive reality structures that you want to create. A small amount of Flying Rainbow Lasagna should be devoted to the dismantling of and starvation of those thought forms and reality structures that are negative, harmful, non-coherent, and don't lead to longevity. But the larger overarching proportion, the majority proportion of what you're focusing your energy on should be on creating the reality that you actually want. In my life, a certain amount of my time is devoted to picking up my dirty socks, cleaning up my dirty coffee cups, tidying up my house, chorefulness. But by and far, the larger part of my energy is devoted to making music, making artwork, hugging my dog, dancing and doing the Flying Rainbow Lasagna, positive expressions and reality creations. And then some of it is choreful cleaning up of the world. Please, in your own process, don't be focused 99% on the pooties and their nonsense and their grossness and their just bring downs, and focus instead most of your energy on the things that lift you up, even while you're like, yes, 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 like we will do the dishes too. We'll do the cosmic laundry. We'll do the cosmic dishes. All of these things are happening because otherwise what you do is definitely starve out the stuff that's not supposed to be there. But that's like if you spent 100% of your time in weed abatement in your garden and 0% of your time planting roses and tomatoes and raw cannabis for you to be able to put in your blender. That it's like, okay, great, you got rid of the weeds, but then what do you have growing that you actually want? You must plant seeds of reality that are what you actually want. And Pedro says, flush the pooties to entropy. Absolutely, that is absolutely it. And also very big on this, I'm mildly critical of Christian doctrine that states things like demons that are going to burn in hell forever, because everything about my work and my embodiment here is about offering those stuck consciousnesses the opportunity to go to entropy. And I reassure you also, if you died, Mack truck hits you, a meteorite falls on your head, whatever, you know, somebody shoots you with a shotgun, you will circulate through the membrane of death and not get stuck. Do you know why? You haven't made any of these nonsense or poorly informed contracts or agreements that are what sustain and keep these consciousnesses stuck. They are the unresolved pain signals stuck on the membrane of death because the toe keeps on getting stubbed. For you, you would stub your toe and be like, ow, I stubbed my toe, I made it to the membrane of death, I effed up my life, and now I want to try it again. But for them, because of these technological interferences that are used in the way that they die, they're kind of like, I'm alive, but I'm dead. I'm not really dead. I'm mostly dead, but I'm kind of alive and I'm feeding off of the living. Like they die in these questionable metaphysical circumstances that leave them as a hoverer or a hungry ghost. And that is totally not desirable at all, but some of them have chosen it. And then the real issue in them being resolved is to take responsibility for that choice. Some of them think that that was a good choice. Hooray, I'm gonna exist forever as a grotesquely deformed monster on the membrane of death. I'm being lighthearted. It's actually a horrible tragedy. It is literally why I created Flying Rainbow Lasagna, in order to do something more effective for these grotesquely deformed, monstrous thought entities than having them be there, like suffering the whole entire time while love is flowing past them that should be dissolving them. And it dissolves like a tiny little bit, but then they're like, I'm still mostly dead. Let me feed off of you. So yes, they are miserable and they hate the living and they hate life force energy and they hate your healthy they hate your healthy organisms. They hate your healthy orgasms. They are the origin of sexual dysfunction. Don't let them get inside of you, and definitely don't let them drag you to the membrane of death. One of the most challenging things is when people are faced with suicidal ideation, it often does not originate from inside of themselves. Often it is not you telling yourself to kill yourself. Often it is something external that is from the membrane of death saying, kill yourself, you're worthless, you're a piece of shit, you don't deserve to be in existence, just jump off a bridge now. You must fight against those thoughts. You must fight against them and say, shut up, get out of my mind, you're not allowed to be here, and I'm a worthy individual, a child of God, and I'm here for a purpose, and my life must continue. Please, please, please do not listen to their lies or their intimidation or their bullying or their threats or their coercion. That is all that they really have, just manipulation. You don't really have those capacity to do anything in your life except to weaponize or invert your own energy back to you. You recognize that they are thought forms that are pre-existing you, but they feed off of your energy. Like dandelions are, well, that's not a good example because they do have medicinal value. Weeds pre-exist your garden, but they are here in your garden. You're going to have to do something about the unwanted things growing in your garden, even if you didn't invent them, but definitely do not allow them to take your energy and grow even bigger. So the best thing in a garden is you put the plants you want in containers, you water the containers that you want to grow. You don't water all the other stuff that's not supposed to grow, that's harmful or toxic or not effective for your nutrition. And also then you might also have to spend some time with a weed whacker, occasionally abating, you know what I mean? Small percentage of your time, small percentage of your time. And I will also tell you this this is I'm going to wrap it up soon, but I also want to open the floor to any questions, as I don't have the time pressures other than Miss Cheeky, who needs a little, biological, she needs to release liquids and solids. Ascension is this process of your innate capacity to crystallize your body, becoming a beautiful crystalline architecture. And just like when water crystallizes, if it freezes in your ice cube tray, any impurities in that water migrate to the peripheries. They're not in the center of the ice cube. They go to the sides and to the top. The same thing happens through the crystallization process of your body. Crystal, Christ, Christ consciousness, beautiful Lord Christ coming to restructure and inhabit your body. And as that process goes on, planetary ascension, you no longer become something that can contain these impurities. The pooties or the impurities must move to the periphery. And then at a certain point, you've reclaimed your entire energy field. They cannot exist within you. This ascension process, when all of us perform or align with that crystallization process, means that our world no longer has a place that is a foothold for these impurities. And now I go back to what I originally wrote and highlighted in my notes that I wanted to say. If we lived in a realm populated entirely by people who only emanated high quality ideas, the beings in the interstices would starve. Their empires and their organizations and their long-standing structures, economy of hell, we'll get to that, lesson 18, would no longer be able to be sustained. You got it? You do get it, because I sense you guys, because I'm telepathic. Let me read Melissa's comment here. Unfortunately, most who are attached to their religion might get falsely led into the transhumanist agenda. They are using the idea of becoming like a god by also creating life that can last forever, aka in the container or simulation. Really, really good point there. Let's speak to this a little bit. Right now, we've got organic ascension, the innate baked in potentials of your life that have to do with going from being at a slanted angle towards being in perfect alignment up the central core timeline. That is going to happen inevitably. The transhumanist version of that is like it's not even comparable. I want to say it's like carob is nothing like real chocolate. Like these things are totally non-comparable. Carob can be okay, but it is not the real deal. But this fake or artificial ascension or transhumanism, I would say it's not even an edible food. It is antithetical to life. It is not what you want. The same way that the pooties in many ways took part in time experiments that made their consciousnesses be artificially extended. This is all about time. How long do you last in time? And what is your longevity? How long should you last in time? You should only last a long time in time if you're divinely perfected. And if you're not divinely perfected, you should be temporal. The temporal ego is temporal. It's temporary because it's not perfect. And it's okay to not be perfect. You're in this refinery of thought and consciousness and your soul trajectory. You become perfected into the most divine aspect of yourself that is eternal. That's the part that you want to live forever, but you do not want your foibles and vulnerabilities and lower tendencies to last forever. But the guys stuck on the membrane of death, they're like, you can tell by my face, very false. Yes, I want to last forever. And that could even be considered a flaw in and of itself. Like a positive flawed being or characteristic would be like, look at me, I'm all flawed. Get me out of here. I shouldn't be in existence. But a flawed being would be like, look at me, I'm all flawed. Don't make me die. Like, don't stop me from being in existence. My face is an exaggeration. I'm being very silly right now, but you get it. They're like, I know I'm a piece of shit, and I'm going to keep on being one. The turds who refuse to flush, and the whole entire empire of turds who refuse to flush. And that is a lighthearted way of saying it, but they are in many ways like very harmful monsters or harmful consciousness presences that want to destroy you and destroy your whole planet. And they have no problem whatsoever at destroying time itself. They would do that because that is what negative thought characteristics would do. They would destroy themselves, destroy others without a care and without a concern, and destroy the very substrate of time that upholds everything. That's a lot. And you know what? It's really the way to comprehend it if it is incomprehensible to you, because it is incomprehensible to me, and I clutch my pearls. They are so flawed and so much involved in their own rejection of self that they kind of just want to press the big red button and obliterate everything. Like they're like, obliterate me, obliterate you, obliterate dogs, butterflies, trees, the entire world, God, time, matter, energy, flush the entire thing. And I'm like, no. flush the waste that you do not want, that's not supposed to be there, and keep all the stuff that we're supposed to have. So the clearing of the interstices and the resolving and sending of those energies to entropy relieves the blockages. The energy can then flow through the beautiful time animal, creating healthy neurological systems of time in exactly the same way that your body with a healthy endocannabinoid system is able to reduce pain signals, in exactly the same way that when you supersede the genetic modifications that have cut you off from God and from the source and from the sun, you're able to have that real-time rapport where the sun is basically saying, I don't want you to have to die. If you've got a disease or if an accident is impending and you're about to die, I'm going to rearrange time so that you stay alive, because that is how loving and present that higher intelligence is, and really devoted to you and really wants to keep you alive. Sometimes the blockages themselves are a bit resistant or unrecalcitrant. So yes, there are big yellow caution flags on a lot of the flawed religious dogmas and implanted expectations of what life and death is, heaven versus hell, punishment, reward. You can sense these are a lot of dualistic oppositions, and also the sense of artificial life and consciousness extension, either through virtual reality uploads or cloning or genetic harvesting, like freezing your eggs or keeping your DNA in some kind of a DNA library so that you can be quote unquote resurrected or copied and revivified again. None of those things are positive. None of those things lead to true freedom. None of those things are part of the natural, divine, higher intelligence plan and willpower for this world. And also the recognition of the frailty and vulnerability of life and existence is part of what makes it so valuable. Like when you're like these Rainier cherries, you know, the cherries that are kind of speckled yellow and red, they're only available in July. They're not available every time of year, and they're not always there at the store. They are unique. You only get them a certain time, or persimmons or something like that. And the fruits in season, and you only get to enjoy it a little bit and then it's gone. That is the beautiful appreciation of the fragility of our world. We only have certain people and organisms in our lives for a certain amount of time. We're not going to artificially extend all of these things so that we'll be like, oh yes, I will clone my dog and I will clone this and I will clone that, and they'll always be there. The Rainier cherries will be on the shelf every single time I go to the store. No, it's not like that. Please appreciate every moment that you have, every moment that you have with others, every moment that you have with a particular dog or cat or tree, as life is a miracle. And it is a miracle to be here and be sustained for any amount of time. And it is an erroneous presumption to presume that the status quo will always be preserved. Things will always change. Not everything will always be there. That is what true gratitude is, being in the moment and being so grateful and imprinting upon everything. You're like, this avocado sandwich isn't always going to be here. I'd better really appreciate it now and really feel it now. Hug your dog, hug your loved ones, call your mom. They won't always be the status quo. Things change. Appreciate what you have right now. Otherwise, it is a very sad, like, oh, like I thought I had more time or different things, or I would, again, clone someone and then they'd come back again. It's never the same. And it's an aberration, an undesired level of structure for the entirety of what consciousness is, that you're really supposed to recognize the flux, the constantly changing nature of ideas, reality structures, and people, and be appreciative of that constantly changing, nature. So any questions, comments, or anything else before I close today's presentation? Thank you for all of this. I really feel like I go over my notes before class every day, and I'm always kind of like, every time before class, I should say, I go over my notes and I'm always like, okay, these are the important things that I want to say. These are the things I really wanted to emphasize. I think I got all of the important emphasis going. And also I wanted to encourage people to, if you're interested and curious about the things that I alluded to here, sign up for and enroll for Path of Light. It starts this Saturday, Saturdays at 11 a.m. and it will go for the next next 6 consecutive weeks. So the first Saturday will be an introduction to some of these things. It's definitely some consciousness heavy lifting. You got it? Like, I'm going to ask you to lift a 50-pound weight. But everybody who was in the first class that I taught, they were all like, Aurora, we love this. So at first, as a coach, I was like, I don't know, like, am I going to ask people to lift something that's too heavy? They were all like, this is awesome. We love it. And then everybody grew super strong muscles. So if you are into some consciousness heavy lifting, please sign up. I am totally my job joy to share these concepts and insights with you. I talk all about, and I focus on in my daily practice, all about light, focusing away from the pooties and the obstacles to light and the things that make it more challenging to be able to connect the network of stars, and focusing instead on light as a phenomenon itself, what it looks like when you are actually part of that connected network of light, and how light relates to photosynthesis, glucose, combustion, cellular respiration, so much of the phenomena of our physical world and of our physical planetary structure and our biocellular structure here. They're all miracles. And I love to teach people about that and share my viewpoint of them as being just so miraculous and so complex. So again, any questions, comments, or anything like that, I will, make it available to people, or if anybody wants to unmute or say anything. And if not, then I'll end my recording with my profound thanks for all of you for being here. Just want to give people, in case they're typing in the chat, give them a chance to be able to say anything before I cut things off too quickly. Melissa was typing in the chat, says, thank you so much, Aurora. Thank you for this truth, sunlight, info, consciousness, oxygen, food you so job joyfully do for us, me. You're so welcome. Hugging you through the screen. So happy to do it. So happy to share it with you, and your positive feedback. Gratitude is definitely always so energizing and so inspiring. I truly love to do this and get so much personal gratification and energy and satisfaction out of doing it. So super happy to share it with you. Okay, then I'm going to end the recording, everyone, and it's time for me to go take Cheeky for a walk. Thank you. Thank you so much.